It's a strange thing to think about. Elvis Presley, the king. A man who could make thousands of people scream just by shaking his leg. A man whose voice could move from a growl to a whisper, from rock and roll to the most delicate gospel hymn. He seemed fearless on stage. A force of nature in a white jumpsuit. So the idea that there was a song he was scared to record sounds wrong. It doesn't fit the picture. But fear is a complicated thing. It's not always about being afraid of a monster under the bed. Sometimes it's about other things. Fear of not being good enough, fear of being a phone. Fear of a truth you're not ready to face. And when you look at Elvis in his later years in the 1970s, you see a man who was more complicated than the legend. He was still the king, yes. But the kingdom was getting smaller. It was mostly Las Vegas. The world was changing, music was changing, and he was stuck in a golden cage. And into this cage comes a song. A huge song. An anthem. A song that was already a monster hit for another legend. The record label wanted it. His manager, the Colonel, definitely wanted it. It was a guaranteed bestseller. A perfect song for that big, booming voice. A song that seemed tailor-made for a man looking back at his incredible life. It was a no-brainer. But Elvis said no. For years, he refused to go into a studio and record it. He pushed back, and the people around him, the ones who knew him best, all said the same thing. He just didn't want to do it. The story that got passed around was simple. He was scared of it. But scared of what? The high notes? Of course not. The man could sing anything. Scared of a bad review? He was Elvis Presley. He was beyond bad reviews. No, the fear was something deeper. It was about the man, not the performer. To understand why he wouldn't touch this song, you have to understand where he was in his life. The public saw the god, the sold-out shows, the private jet, the capes, the karate kicks. But behind the scenes, things were different. His marriage to Priscilla had fallen apart. His health was getting worse. He was surrounded by his crew, the Memphis Mafia, but he was profoundly lonely. He was living a life that was controlled by his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, a man who saw Elvis not as an artist, but as a product. A money-making machine. Elvis's process for picking songs was always about feeling. He had to connect with the lyrics. He had to believe what he was singing. He grew up on gospel music, on the blues. That music came from the soul. It was honest. When he sang a gospel song like How Great Thou Art, you knew he believed every single word. When he sang a heartbroken ballad, you could feel the pain. That was his gift. He was an interpreter. He could take someone else's words and make you feel them as if they were his own. But he had to feel them first. So, let's look at the song itself, without naming it just yet. It's a song about the end. The final curtain is falling. A man is looking back on his life, his entire journey. And he's saying he did it his way, no regrets, he faced it all, stood tall, and did it on his own terms. It's a statement of ultimate confidence, of total self-possession. It's a victory lap. The song had its own history. It started as a French pop song about a couple falling out of love. A pretty standard theme. But then the Canadian singer and songwriter Paul Anka heard it. He bought the rights to the music and wrote a completely new set of English lyrics. He didn't write them for himself. He wrote them specifically for Frank Sinatra. Sinatra was at a point in his career where he was thinking about retiring. He was the chairman of the board. An icon. Anka imagined what a guy like Frank would say if he were summing it all up. And he nailed it. When Sinatra sang it, it was believable. It was his life story in 3 minutes. He really had done it his way. The song became his signature. It was more than a hit. It was a personal anthem for millions of people. It was Frank's song. And this was the first problem for Elvis. He had immense respect for other artists, and especially the legends like Sinatra. To record this particular song felt, to him, like stepping on another man's turf. It felt like doing a cover of a song that was already perfect, that was already completely owned by someone else. Why would he do that? Elvis was an originator. He made songs famous. He didn't ride on the coattails of another superstar's biggest hit. It was a matter of pride. His guys, the people in his inner circle, said he would tell them, that's Sinatra's song. He just couldn't see it as his own. The Colonel and the record company, RCA, didn't care about any of that. They saw a formula. Big star plus, big song E, big money. They pushed and pushed. They saw it as the ultimate Las Vegas ballad, a showstopper, the kind of thing people would stand up and cheer for at the end of the night. And they were right, it was. But Elvis kept resisting. This brings us to the second, and much deeper, reason for his reluctance, the lyrics. Read them, really think about them. And now, the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. Elvis was in his late 30s, he was not an old man, but he wasn't healthy. He was taking a lot of prescription pills to sleep, to wake up, to perform. People around him were worried. He was living a life that was burning him out. Imagine being in that state, feeling trapped and tired, and being asked to sing a song about the end being near. It must have felt morbid. It must have felt like singing your own eulogy. He wasn't ready to do that. He was still trying to be creative. He had just done the 68 comeback special a few years earlier, proving to the world he still had that raw rock and roll fire. He wanted to tour the world, to make serious movies, to stretch himself as an artist. But the Colonel kept him in Vegas, doing the same show over and over. So when he heard the lyrics, "I've lived a life that's full, I've traveled each and every highway," did that feel true to him? On one level, yes, of course, he'd seen and done more than anyone. But on another, deeper level, it felt like a lie. He felt stuck on one highway, the one that led to the International Hotel in Las Vegas, where he wasn't in control of his own path. The Colonel was. The song is a triumphant declaration of independence. But Elvis didn't feel independent. He felt managed. He felt trapped. The core message of the song is, "I did it my way." And that was the biggest lie of all for him at that time. He wasn't doing it his way. He was doing it the Colonel's way. The Colonel made the deals. The Colonel picked the movie scripts that he hated. The Colonel wouldn't let him tour overseas because the Colonel himself was an illegal immigrant and couldn't get a passport, a fact he hid from Elvis for his entire life. Elvis wanted to grow. He wanted to be a real actor. He wanted to evolve. But his career was a business, and he was the main asset. He knew it. So for him to stand on a stage and sing with conviction, "I did it my way," would have been a performance, not a confession. And for an artist who built his entire career on authentic feeling, that was a line he couldn't cross. It wasn't fear of the song, it was fear of the inauthenticity. It was a refusal to sing a lie, especially a lie that grand, that final. Priscilla Presley has talked about this. She said he just didn't like the song. He found it pretentious. He told her it didn't reflect his life. He felt his life was not one of his own making in a lot of ways. He was a spiritual man. He believed in God, in fate. The idea of taking all the credit, of saying, "I did it all myself," felt arrogant to him. It went against his humble gospel roots. So you have this perfect storm of resistance. It's Sinatra's song. The lyrics feel like a premature death sentence, and the central message feels like a complete lie about the state of his own life and career. He wasn't looking back with no regrets. He was full of them. He regretted the terrible movies he'd been forced to make. He regretted not being able to tour for his fans in Europe and Japan. He regretted the loss of his family. And the song was a fantasy of a life he wished he had, a life of total control, but it wasn't the life he was living. But the pressure was immense. The Colonel was not a man who took no for an answer when it came to money. And the song was just sitting there, a pot of gold waiting to be claimed. So a compromise was reached. Elvis would not record it in a studio. He would not give it the full production treatment, where he could work on it for hours, perfect it, and make it his own. That was his final line in the sand. A studio recording was a statement. It meant the song was officially part of his canon, his legacy. He refused to do that. However, he did perform it live a few times. The most famous instance was for his 1973 television special, Aloha, from Hawaii via satellite. This was a massive event, broadcast to over 1 billion people around the world. Well, it was the biggest audience of his life. He was at the peak of his 70s fame. And for this global stage, he sang the song. If you watch the footage, it's fascinating. He has the lyrics in his hand on a piece of paper. He glances down at them as he sings. And Elvis Presley, the man who knew hundreds, if not thousands, of songs by heart. He needed a cheat sheet. That tells you everything. It wasn't in his bones. It wasn't part of him. It was a request. An assignment. His performance is, of course, vocally incredible. He hits the soaring final notes with a power that Sinatra never could. He puts on a show. He gives the audience the epic moment they expect, but there's a distance to it. He's delivering the song, not inhabiting it. It's a demonstration of his vocal talent, not an expression of his soul. It's like he's showing everyone, "See? I can sing it. I can sing it better than anyone. But it's still not my song." He sang it a handful of other times on tour, but it was never a regular part of his show. It was a novelty, something to be pulled out on a special occasion, likely at the request of the Colonel or RCA. It never replaced his true closing numbers, the songs he actually loved, like Can't Help Falling in Love. And then in August 1977, Elvis died. He was only 42. The end had come far too soon. The final curtain had fallen, and in that tragedy, the song found its moment. The Colonel and RCA, now free from any of Elvis's artistic objections, immediately dug up a live recording of the song. They released it as a single. Suddenly, the lyrics were no longer a premature statement. They were a fitting, heartbreaking epitaph. With Elvis gone, the song took on a whole new meaning. The public heard it as his last will and testament, became a huge posthumous hit, one of his biggest of the era. The irony is staggering. The song he resisted for so long in life, the one he refused to claim as his own, became one of the defining songs of his death. And it cemented an image of him that he himself had rejected. It painted his life with a triumphant brush, ignoring the struggle and the sadness that he was living with. So, was he scared of it? Yes. But not in the way most people think. He wasn't scared of the music. He was scared of what it represented. He was scared of the dishonesty. He was scared of putting his name on a sentiment he just didn't feel. For an artist whose entire being was wrapped up in emotional truth, singing that song was a kind of betrayal of himself. He knew he wasn't the man in the lyrics. The man in the lyrics was free. The man in the lyrics was at peace with his choices. Elvis was not. He was a lion in winter, but he still believed there were more seasons to come. He hoped for another comeback, another chance to redefine himself. That song closes the book. And he just wasn't ready to close the book. He wanted to write a few more chapters. Tragically, he never got the chance. The music industry, in the end, got what it wanted. The song became an Elvis classic. It's played at funerals and tributes. It's seen as the ultimate summary of his Titanic life. But it's a summary written by someone else, a story he never agreed to tell. He gave them the vocal performance, but he never gave them his soul. He held that back. That was the one part of himself he wouldn't sell. He stood his ground on that. And in a strange way, by refusing to embrace the song, he actually did do it his way. The song that Elvis Presley was too scared, too proud, and too honest to record in a studio was, of course, My Way.